Hey ho everyone, today we're going to talk about the front shocks. I'll put a little clip in how they are looking. Yeah, sadly I forgot to film the removal of the shock, but it's actually pretty simple. You undo the brake caliper first, 2 little bolts, undo this little clip so you can get the line off. Then you remove these 2 longer bolts from the bottom. I think they're all 17 if I'm not mistaken. Let's check. Yeah, should be 17 exactly. And then you remove the lower sway bar bolt that you can get the arm down a bit further. And I put my jack here. I supported it with my adjustable jack stand. And yeah, when you have these 2 loose, you get the 3 on the top loose. And then you just, what I did was I put my foot like somewhere here on the corner, pushed it down a little bit, and then you can pull it up to get it out of these pins and over this bolt or over this nut. Pull it up and then pull it out. This way it's a super simple process, maybe 15 minutes if you're quick, maybe even quicker. And yeah, now that we've got that out, you can see this one is adjusted completely wrong. And yeah, the shocks inside are broken, so we're gonna replace these, and I'm gonna take you inside the house and show you how to repair these custom shocks, because as you can see, it's a factory AE86 lower part, spindle and everything, but it has a custom adjustable coilover thread here. There's several ways how to do it. The most common way is to get weldable ones. So you cut the strut about where the previous spring perch was. So about here, you cut out a little part where the spring perch was. You shorten the shocks if you want to run shorter shocks. So you shorten the shock body to account for shorter shocks. And then you put the sleeve over it and weld it up again. That's how the normal way to do it if you want to run short style shocks, like the TRD short style, or I'm having Cusco short style, which is basically just a copy in the same length. I think 330 millimeters is the short shock length. It's called, if you want to Google it, the AE92 short shock. That's how they're sold, but they fit the AE86 as well. And this one, however, is a custom one. As you can see, this sleeve over here is just slotted over it, secured with these 3, how do you call them? Like these little nut bolts. And the shock body is stock length. So what's in here is a little spacer to account for the shorter shocks. And that's what you can see if you want to run it at the lower ride height. You encounter a problem with the long shock body. Because with the shorter shock body, you can push the shock insert further into the housing, thus reducing its length at the top. But you need to secure the inner shock body, or the inner shock actually, with a little nut on the top under this sleeve. I'm going to show how to disassemble it, and then it's easier to understand. But if you don't shorten that and then you put in a short style shock, the shock can move up and down inside the shock body. So that's why you can either need a spacer down here, or you need to shorten the shock body in order to run a short style shock. What I'm gonna do for now, since you see this problem here, that the spring is just too short, it's not going to be solved with the new shock, because the new shock is the same length, the short one, short style shock with a little spacer here. For now, I'm going to run it at a higher ride height, because I also have the higher, okay, now it's jacked up, but I also have the longer shocks and longer springs in the back, so it matches. I'm going to run it at a higher ride height. And in the future, what I'm going to do is run assistant springs. They're really thin springs, which basically have such a low spring rate that as soon as you set the car down, they do absolutely nothing. But what they do is when your car goes on full droop, let's say a rally jump or whatever, something like that, they fill up this gap. So your spring, this spring is somehow seized, but this spring can't rattle around in here. That's what they do. And they just go below, or yeah, mostly below the main spring. Then there's a little plastic, you know, spring perch here again. And yeah, with that you can still run the spring, for example, at this low ride height. Let's say this, the assistant spring makes up this gap maybe, or maybe this gap. So you adjust your yeah, spring adjustment a bit lower, and then if it's on full droop, the car, this assistant spring fills up this gap and thus doesn't make your spring move around like that, because that's pretty dangerous. It can get caught somewhere, it can move, you know. You don't want that. This is really what you don't want at all. So I'm gonna adjust it higher. I'm gonna turn these up to here. So for now the spring is under continuous tension, and yeah, in the future I'm gonna add helper springs so I can run the car lower, but I think that can wait until I have the short style shocks in the rear as well, so I can run the rear lower, and then I'm gonna add some helper springs for the front as well. So let's take this inside and show you how to disassemble this kind of modified AE86 factory shock. Okay, now that we got the strut out, it's on the operation table and we can start to take it apart, which is really simple. If your spring is loose like that, you can just take off the top nut without any problem. If your spring is under tension how it's supposed to be, you should of course use a spring tensioner here, or what I think, if you don't have that, which I think is easy on a coilover like that, you just loosen these washers, wind down your suspension all the way until your spring is under no tension anymore, and then you can just take it off. But if you don't want to readjust it, never take off this top nut with tension in the systems. Things can go really wrong there. But yeah, we got the top hat off. This is could be Cusco. It has nothing written on it. Could be no name as well. Just from judging from the color, I thought could be Cusco. Anyways, it's an adjustable top hat. Get that off. Then you have this little spacer thingy, which goes below that. Then you take off your top hat. I'm gonna clean all of these to make them look a bit nicer again. Next, we take out the spring. And now it's on to taking off this sleeve already, for which we are going to use this is a 2.5 millimeter Allen key. I think you call it an Allen key. And you just want to really carefully not to strip those. Okay. First one out. I'm gonna take them out all the way, since yeah, this sits on the shock body pretty tight already, so I don't want have these stick out any tiny millimeter and get caught somewhere. So make sure to always get your Allen key in there nice and well, and then they come out like a charm. So there's 3 of them all around, which keep this, basically this sleeve is kind of hammered on, like it's kind of like a press fit, and these just give it some additional yeah, seating clamping force, because the spring constantly pushes against this, so you don't really have the risk of this slipping off anyways, because the shock, which is the only part which would push this up, is secured by the nut under this, so there's basically nothing really that can go wrong. Yeah, with this kind of design, at least from my thinking, and with these all taken off, we can get our shock here. I like to use my extension for my jack. I mangled it a bit here already, but I'm gonna grind that off later. Okay, now we can go ahead and try to hammer this off. yeah, I think on the camera you can see it, but moved a little bit already. That means we're on the right track, and now we just need to keep hammering. It's on there pretty tight, so it just takes a while. And there we are. This is the sleeve I was talking about. Took a lot of hammering to get that off, but now we can see the strut was even ground down here a little bit to get rid of some of the paint to get it fit tighter. And yeah, up here it's this little nut. It has some indentations, so you can use a flathead screwdriver and a hammer to get that one loose. And yeah, let's see how this goes. Yeah, as you can see, there's sadly no indentation here. So on the previous shock that I did, this must have been something that was just hammered in to get this off. We want to get it off this way, so we'll try to get our screwdriver to catch somewhere and then to hammer it out. There's also these holes in the top. I think this is the conventional way how this thing gets installed and uninstalled. But since I don't have this installation tool, we need to try to make it work like this. Okay guys, sadly my camera died while I was doing that, so I can only show you how it worked and explain it a little bit, but it's actually not that difficult. As I said before, this doesn't have anything where you can grab onto to unscrew it. This is this top nut which goes here, and it has these holes in the top where you could use some kind of specialized tool to get it off. But since I didn't have that, I took my grinder and ground a little edge into it, where I could then hook in my screwdriver and hammer it off. It took a few blows, but it eventually came off. They're not extremely tight, at least normally when you're doing this to a completely factory shock that's never been taken apart. If you want to do this conversion, for example, it might be a bit tighter since they're pretty old, but yeah, you can get these new as well, and the new ones, they mostly have some kind of hex pattern on here, so you can undo it with a wrench easier. But yeah, the original ones, since they were never meant to be taken apart again actually, I mean, at least if you have the specialized tool, of course, but not by anyone. So yeah, that's how this works. And when you get this out, you can take out, I put it aside already, the shock which sits in here just slides out. This one is a TRD shock made by Tokiko, which is like, these TRD shocks were made by Tokiko or a different brand, but I forgot the name. So they were made by different brands. This one is still okay, like you can see it retracts. Might still work a little bit, but we're upgrading to the adjustable ones. So yeah, this one can go out. We're gonna put this beautiful Cusco adjustable one in there. As you can see, this nut is different from the one we're using. I guess this one works on factory style top hats, but since ours is different, we use the special nut, so we're going to reuse this one. But before we put that in, I'm gonna go ahead and clean everything nicely, clean off these parts, the spring, and make everything look a bit more pretty. And yeah, then we can go ahead and assemble everything again. Now that we've got everything cleaned up, we can go ahead and put everything back together. And that is gonna go exactly the opposite direction of where we came from. So first we're gonna put in this beautiful Cusco adjustable shock. As I said before, we're not going to need the nut on the top, so So we're gonna take that out and just slide it in like that. As you can see, what keeps this shock inside is gonna be this nut here. So just carefully, not to scratch the actual rod. Slide it on here. As you can see, now I can't move it already anymore, so now we're gonna make sure that the shock is centered, because this one has a little bit of play in it, at least until you bolt it down. So you just try to see that the gap all around the shock is gonna be as even as possible. It's not gonna make much of a difference, but that's just how I like to do things. And that's looking pretty good. Now we use our screwdriver and hammer method again to hammer on this collar, this ring nut. Okay, that's as far on as we're gonna get. Make sure it's nice and smooth all around. Maybe I can try to grind down this piece a bit, because as you know, this sits pretty tight on there. So I'll just try to grind that down a little bit. Always wear your safety glasses. All right, and with that all prepared, can get the shock ready, situated. Remove the top hat again. And then we're gonna start hammering on this guy. For that, I also just like to put something over the fresh new shock as well, since I don't want to scratch it. So we're just gonna go like that. And then actually maybe let's get it through this hole first. You can set it on here. Just make sure that you don't get any of the plastic caught in the thing. There we go. And why I like to use this one is because you have the rubber all around, so you can set the rubber on here. Make sure you don't scratch the shock, and have the metal inner part push on the actual sleeve. And at some point you will hear the sound of the hammering change from when it starts to hit up here. So when that happens, and when you see this one had the little screws down here, so you need to see the marks there. When you're about that same height and you get it on all the way, that's where you can then stop. Okay, with that in all the way, we can put these 3 little tiny screws back in. Little screws require a little Loctite. As I said, I think you don't need to use it, but I think I like the practice of just making sure these don't come out again on their own. Anytime you have something where you screw things in different positions on a round thing, make sure that you don't tighten one completely to the maximum first and then the other ones, or you risk of, not centering the actual part you're dealing with. So if you carefully tighten them one by one, like one after another, like in a circle motion, or in a circle pattern, I would rather say. Then you can make sure that you're actually screwing on everything nice and evenly. With these tiny bolts, really make sure not to over tighten them. They're really easy to strip out. That's why I think using the actual Allen key is a nice thing, because they always just have the length where you mostly can't put on too much force. So I think if you get it like that, together with a little Loctite, it should be great. Okay, cool. Anytime I do something like this, I like to use a little pen and just make some marks. Then I can see if anything moved over the usage of the car. You know, mark the bolt as well. And then mark this whole thing, see if that turns or something. A bit safer with your maintenance that you're doing. You can check if the things you did actually work and don't cause any problems. All right, next we can put on the spring. I want to adjust these, but since they're a bit hard to get off with the strut so loose, I'll assemble it easily without needing the spring compressor like this. And then in the car, I'll loosen these up and adjust it to the correct ride height. But in order to get the spring perch on, we're going to need to machine that the slightest bit. Okay, and with that all ready to go, we can finally go ahead and assemble the rest of the shock. It's just as easy as getting the spring, deciding which part is going to be top, which is going to be bottom. Actually, it's both the same. So get the spring on first, next the upper spring perch. Then you have this little, or at least I have this little adapter to match the strut top. Get that on, then get the strut top on, just like that, together with the proper nut. Okay, cool. And with that, we got the whole strut together. As you can see, the spring is not adjusted yet. We'll do that when we get it in the car. Then we can hammer that loose, hammer these loose, which I'm also going to use this tool. Just set it in here, give it a few blows, can lower, loosen both, and then spin them up, tighten them back up together, and then you're good to go. Let's do that. It's dark outside already, so maybe the installation process is going to be a bit dark, but I'll try to show as much as I can. Okay, this is the situation. We're just gonna try to manage the strut in on the top. I'll try to put the nut on the top so it doesn't fall down, and then we can, you know, try to push this down and get it on here. Nice. With that, we got our shock on here, so we can take. Firstly, we can probably reattach the caliper so it doesn't fly around here. Now, what I like to do with old crush washers like this, you can see there's not much crushing going on here. Mostly I take the crush washer and try to bend it open a little bit again. I'm not sure if that works, if that's doing anything actually, but it gives me a better feeling when I'm putting these things together. Then we can get the caliper bolted in, which is a 17. Before I torque it down, I'm going to put in the strut completely, so then nothing moves around anymore. As I said, since I didn't film the removal. There's 2 bolts down here. One goes on this side. And the second one goes on the other side over here. Okay, now let's get the ones at the top hat on. These should be 12s. Now we can try to adjust our strut at the top here. Cool. That's loose. Now we're gonna tighten the top one until, as you can see, all the way up here until the spring has no play anymore. Obviously that's gonna raise the car about that bit. Let's say 2 centimeters roughly, but that's all right. If that, look, now we're all good. Spring doesn't move anymore. We can give it a tiny bit of preload so it's nice and firm in there, it doesn't jump around. And then we can get the bottom one up. And then we can get them nicely tightened up against each other. And then, since these are kind of whack, I like to give it a little tap. Then, to make sure, like we did down here, I'm just gonna mark these. It's not good that I use the silver pen, but it's gonna be okay. So we can see if something moved there or not. Interesting to get the spring as well. The spring's gonna move definitely, from what I think. And with that we're gonna torque down these 4, and then we're gonna reattach the sway bar. Actually, let's do that first. Let's get our bushing. This is the bushing. I have these just regular standard poly bushes, which go down here. And then you put on the nut. And this one is a 12 as well, so we can just tighten that up. Okay, cool. Next, we're gonna tighten up this top bolt, but since that is a bit hard to tighten without turning the shock underneath, I'm just gonna use the impact and give it a few taps. Should be good. One more for safety. And then we're gonna use our trusty pen and also mark this one. Make sure we got a nice clean line that we can check on later. Let's also give those a little line. It's just a useful practice to do that with all bolts you're dealing with. Then you can always check. Actually, I didn't do that on the other side while we're at it, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's give these a little mark as well, and this guy too. Cool, then we know what's going on. And with that, we are done. We can just now disassemble everything or reassemble everything. Basically just put the wheel back on. We got the caliper bolts torqued down. We got the brake line attached. We got this all torqued up. We got the lower ones torqued up, we got the top ones torqued up, we got the spring. Okay, see, the spring can still move a bit, but it at least got a bit of preload. That should be enough. As I said, we'll be redoing the spring setup anyways. So I'll take out my jack stand, lower the car down, put the wheel on, lower the car down, and then let's go on a test drive.